Okey-doke. Right, shall we begin then? Okey-doke. Okey-doke. Right, just turn that off. Shall we begin then? Okey-doke. Right, sorry about that. Setting up YouTube. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Oh, I've got two of me coming up. Well, I'm getting confused. I've got too many of me. Is that better? Yeah, hello. Hello, yes, that's fine. Just one of me. Yeah, my name's Noel Chidwick. I'm the publisher of Umbrellas of Edinburgh. Shrine of Infinity is what we're called. I'm just saying all that backwards because I'm trying to do 5 things simultaneously. I must stop that. Yep, so we've got the great pleasure of republishing the new edition of Umbrellas of Edinburgh. I will hold my copy up there. It does exist. It's now available. I'm very pleased and delighted to be able to do this. It's fantastic. It's a book I enjoyed when it first came out. So I'm really glad we can host this event this evening. And I'm going to pass you over to Russell Jones, one of the editors, and he will take it from here. Russell, over to you.
Hi everyone, so great to see you all and so many of you. Lots of you who are of course in the book, and here it is. You can see lots of copies behind me too, so it is officially out today. And thankfully you can also purchase copies. I put a little link at the side there, and we're still doing the early bird sale at the moment. But I thought we'd start with me saying a few words about why the anthology came about originally. And that was basically because I was speaking to Claire about this idea of there not really being a contemporary anthology of writing about Edinburgh, and the fact that the kind of older anthologized pieces tended to be written by old white men and often dead white men, and we felt that kind of needed to change. We're in a modern and diverse city, and we felt an anthology needed to show that. So that was about 4 years ago that we published the original, which you can see here with Freight Books. And about 5 years ago, it must have been that me and Claire were thinking of putting this together, and we received hundreds of submissions and thousands of emails were sent. Finally, when it was published, Umbrellas of Edinburgh sold about 2,500 copies in under 6 months before Freight sadly went into liquidation and took all of our profits along with it, and I'm not bitter. But thankfully, it was well received, and not only in sales, but also by reviewers. It was highlighted by the Scottish Poetry Library in a podcast, which is quite substantial, and you can still see. It was also part of the interactive lit long map where you could walk around the city and listen to bits about the city from the book. It was also featured on a Janice Forsyth show. It was one of the best poetry books of 2016, as voted by the Poetry Library and more. And we basically felt that we couldn't just let the book fizzle out after Freight disappeared. And so Claire and I spent a very long time trying to resurrect this book. And thankfully, well, not to trump our horn our own trumpet, what's the phrase? Blow our own horn. But I think we've done a really good job here. And Claire's going to talk briefly now about how Umbrellas of Edinburgh came back and what we wanted to do to try and make something even better. So I'll pass you over to Claire Askew.
Yeah, thank you, Russell and Noel, for kicking things off. As Russell says, it was a really long road to get to this new edition. We had a couple of false starts with some publishers who were really interested in the project, but for one reason or another couldn't take us on in the end. But we'd had, as Russell says, we'd had such success with this book, and we were hearing from people who wanted a copy and couldn't get one because when Freight went into liquidation, all but I think 39 copies, unsold copies, were pulped. So if you have an original Umbrellas of Edinburgh, save it for eBay one day, basically, because they're quite hard to get hold of now. But we were hearing from people that they wanted this book to continue to exist, and we were really passionate about doing some kind of update, some kind of new edition. And we decided that we would like to expand the book, because for all that we managed to visit many, many places in and around Edinburgh. We didn't get to them all, and there were some in particular that we were really keen to visit with the new edition. So we did two things. First of all, we commissioned a new cover and some new artwork by Nick Askew, who is a relation, I'll admit. But I think you'll agree that he's done an amazing job of creating this Scott Monument cover for us. And then inside the book, he's also made hand-drawn maps to accompany every section, and every section of the book corresponds to an area in the city. But then we also commissioned a whole series of new poems to visit some of those places that we had missed with the first edition. And I won't list them all, but among them are poems about Roslyn Chapel by Stella Harvey-Birrell, and a piece on Summer Hall by Snigdha Koirala. And we're going to hear a piece from Alice Tarbuck in just a second. She's also one of our new poets who's in the new edition. But first of all, I have to tell you about our amazing publisher, the people who decided to finally take us on, or should I say the person. It's Noel, really. It's all down to Noel. We're really appreciative that he decided to bring us into the fold of Shoreline of Infinity. Thank you, Noel. And if you would like to buy a copy of the book, we'd really ask that you buy one direct from shorelineofinfinity.co.uk, because Shoreline is a small publisher. These are very hard times for everybody, but for small publishers in particular. And although you can get the book other places, we'd really appreciate it if you'd order it direct from the publisher. And if for some reason you can't, then please order it from an indie bookshop, because they also need our help at this time. So that is Umbrellas of Edinburgh, the new edition. We're really proud to be launching it, and I'm going to stop talking now and hand over to the talented people whose work is inside its pages. And we're going to start with hopefully Alice Tarbuck, who was having connection issues. But Alice, I hope you're there.
I'm here.
Amazing. Okay, so over to you for our first reading.
Everything broke. So, but I'm alive. So here we are. So I was delighted to be asked to contribute, and have long had a very vexed relationship with the Witches' Well Memorial up on the castle esplanade, and so took the opportunity to write a very cross poem about it. So here it is. The inscription at the beginning is taken from the Witches' Well Memorial text, which says, "Some used their exceptional knowledge for evil purposes, while others were misunderstood and wished their kind nothing but good." And the poem is called Exceptional Knowledge. Exceptional knowledge is the moment you sit in the kitchen with your own two hands. Understand that nobody else is coming. Understand it's use them or get nothing. Exceptional knowledge is the form of your unwanted noticing. Which blood-backed coughs will stick, which cows are falling ill, and when they will get worse. A curse is cast by speaking out. A curse is cast by keeping your mouth still. Do you know how grubby and small it is, this life? Hygeia and Asclepius can take a hike, wait it out by Surgeons' Hall. Let the rest get on with colds and babies, ordinary mortal business, trying your best, then going up in flames. Have any of us ever wished our kind nothing but good? Have any of us never thought, I'll put a limp in your gate, I'll bury your name deep, I'll damp your woodpile, stamp your embers, steal your sleep, your coin, I'll send you lice, I'll drown your bloody ship, your bloody wife. Burnt girls don't need live men's words to speculate their good intentions. They need witnesses against forgetting. They need graves so we can bring libations, so they never thirst again. And I am handing over to Finola Scott with her poem next. So thank you very much indeed.
Finola, you need to unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm just doing that. I'm switching between the text and the page. I have two poems. The first one's a little one. I live in the west of Scotland, and this is what I remember really vividly about Edinburgh. Har. This city's a cutting room tonight. Slashed ribbons of fog breeze braze. Clattering cobbles hush. Tattered organza halts Jekyll's progress. Cordons narrow closes. Cloaks solemn steps. Shreds of chiffon wander winds. Muzzle mouths. Silence Deacon Brodie. This city's a cutting room. Dank white damask chokes booted footfalls. Burke and Hare slips stealthily. Dr. Knox is safe again. Ice satin snags and drapes. The castle's a glowering ghost. Cut on the bias, crystal mist, vines, blinds. Edinburgh's under wraps. And the next one is the poem that's in the book, and it's I don't know whether it needs an introduction. I'm not big on introductions, but perhaps it should. It's the World's End pub, and some of you may be aware of a dreadful tragedy that centred on the pub, and this poem is in honour of the people involved. Cheeky birdies. One for sorrow, two for joy. It squats twa-faced on the corner, midnight blue as a magpie's wing, looking down and round the brae, linking castle and palace, with Parliament ricked at the bottom. Aince by the gates in the city wall, it teetered on the edge. Outside, naewhere. Inside, the hale world, Edinburgh. Forlorn pair of bright lasses out for a night in the toon, it was the end of the world. Nae mair they dance to David Cassidy, nae mair sing with the Osmonds. 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for young. No tourists gang into the dank pub to savour real Edinburgh, to scoff Cullen skink, hod-tide leeks and bowls of creamy crowdy. Then it wasna real ale or red wine, just wee hoffs soaked in dark corners by quiet men leaning on their elbows, waiting for time. But ane of those men wasna just quiet. He eyed them with dark thoughts, laughed, lured, then bound them, leaving them, the judge telt, like carrion, exposed for all to see. 6 for old, 7 for a secret never to be told. Thank you for listening, and thank you to the wonderful teams that have made this possible. And now over to Ricky Monin-Brown.
Thank you, Finola. Let's see how far I can get through my short story Valhalla in about 5 minutes. I've borrowed a book of Edinburgh city walks from the library to get my bearings back. This one takes me through the old Calton burial ground, which Abraham Lincoln benevolently surveys from a plinth. His monument marks the graves of 5 Scots who died in the Civil War, all on the Union side. Uncertain of the details of my journey after a long absence, I've been repeatedly taking my phone out of my pocket to check my progress. Edinburgh always claimed to be built on 7 hills, like Rome, its spiritual predecessor. Arthur's Seat, Blackford Hill, Braid Hills, Castle Hill, Corstorphine Hill, Craiglockhart Hill, and the one I'm standing on now. Or maybe it's the 7 in the old rhyme. Abbey, Calton, Castle Grand, southward see St Leonard stand. St John in Sheens is 2 again, and Moultries makes 7. Or maybe the map in my pocket is right, and Edinburgh is really built on countless hills and under innumerable bridges, a labyrinthine rat run. But the Nelson Monument looms above, so I take a chance on my gut and head up a narrow, stone, tree-lined set of stairs signposted as Jacob's Ladder. Because going with my gut always worked well before, I wryly reflect. Re-emerging into the light, I orient myself again. Horatio's 105-foot telescope still stands on its end to the north, but a little closer now, peering deep into Edinburgh's heart. So I cross Carlton Road and set off up another flight of stone steps to the summit. Halfway up, a monk in grey robes and Reeboks stops me with an expectant smile. He passes me a little plastic amulet bearing an exhortation to work smoothly for lifetime peace, and opens a small flip book to a picture of his temple. Then he passes me another little booklet and a pen, indicating that I can fill in my name, home country, a message of peace, and a pledge. I fish in the pocket of my jeans for a £1 coin, and the monk thanks me with another smile. He indicates the little yellow flowers crowding into the stairway and tells me in quiet, halting English, when the gorse is in bloom, it is the kissing time. I smile and nod. When I reach the top of the hill, I smell the salty sea air blowing across the flat, open expanse of the park. I mark a cross on Calton Hill and stuff the map back into my pocket. Above, a plane slices a contrail across the blue sky, having turned the shoulder of North Berwick. That was always my favourite part of the flight back from New York, seeing the harbours of Leith and Edinburgh laid out 5,000 feet below. Like the map I once poured across my parents' living room floor, tracing from where Mum fished me out of New Haven Harbour at low tide to where Pa watched as I righted myself after capsizing under the Forth Rail Bridge. But I never took that flight often enough. Not even after the desks at Cantor Fitzgerald, 80 floors above the desk of my late wife, were turned to dust. Dust that silted up the Hudson River, the Diamond Reef, and the lungs of New York City's rescue workers. Having taken a few breaths of recollection, I start towards the top of the monument. Just a few steps into the 143 whitewashed stairs spiralling upwards, the frame of a recessed window relays the message, almost there. How brilliantly Edinburgh, I think. It's still inside me 20 years later. Even now, when Chloe flies away to visit her parents in South Carolina, I can feel the petrifying stoicism spreading outwards again to cold fingers and toes. Closer to the top of the tower, another message in black paint exhorts me to keep going on. And I do. Thanks. And now over to Lady Red Eagle.
Good evening. I'm going to read my 2 poems from the anthology and then 1 extra. Love poem to the Scottish Parliament. I've always liked Scottish girls, and you know it, show it, wear heritage beneath your clothes. Your sprawling white body, your reflective freckles, sunless skin that peels, highlight like the wings of a beetle. In a country this grey, you need a lot of windows. We all grow into our bodies. Mine is yellow, but I like your pale. And aren't you also mixed? Traditional and futuristic, you would not exist if it weren't for forward flow. You would like to have grown from the land, but neither of us own our homes. Only love is organic. I like your shapes, your swirls. You have leaves like a tree, branches like concrete, and could carry a citizen across the sea. Immigrate into the future. Tell me you won't leave. The Royal Yacht Britannia. You are set in time. Blue moves, but stillness needs transparency. Amber royalty. Every location has already been reached. Your destination is your departing. And what of all these flies inside your body? You are the old lady you are always eating. Do we see ourselves as meat or as passing? For we make you a sewage system. We go through, we recycle. The time bit exists in the limit. We make you our poem. A visitor becomes a word, sentence, stanza, brick-like builds, identity. You cram them in, but they say the same thing, each synonym repeating. A Monet impression is made of spaces. The water is waving. You are not sailing. And this is the last poem I'm going to read, and it's called Displacement. A few days after I arrived, I got my period. A small round patch on the white crotch of my underwear, as violet and delicate as a peach pit, which always rises to meet teeth. Salty heat, a dust cake of air curling in underneath my clothes. Wearing clothes is like being naked here. Being naked here is like being submerged. I have Western hips. I am uprooted in China, my tendrils shivering skywards, a pathetic display of wordless feeling, because I can ask for yogurt drink and where the bathroom is and powder for sweat rash, but cannot tell you how coming back here is almost like grief. My own name, mixed blood, is cloth soaking up iron and zinc. I squat down over the toilet with a hand bunched in my skirt and do not know why I was born. China is a dream that slips away in Glasgow. I come close to comprehending it in my peripheral vision, but it stings my eyes to look right at it. I think that I am sometimes still a fetus, everything and nothing, waiting to be translated into air, light, a recognizable shape. Thank you, and now over to Marjorie.
Thank you. I'm going to read 3 poems too. I'll start with the first one in the collection, which is about the meadows in the south side of Edinburgh. It's called Crossing the Meadows. This clearing of sky takes a knife to the edge of town, lops off its scraggled end. That old record store with bins and a plastic man chained to the front door grinning at the red hot and blue tattooed girl. The queue of second-hand bicycles wet in wind for want of a rider. If you like, use twilight to blunt the city's tale, the bit as a kid you never wanted to see from the car window. You'll miss the breaking open of empty space, its belly zigzagged with concrete, and the arms of trees grazing people rushing past, focused only on getting from here to there, failing to notice the change in light. I, for one, do not want to cross this threshold and cannot tell you why. I knew I was going to be last tonight, so I thought it might be nice to share some images. So this next poem is in response to this image by Chave Golistan. Hopefully you can see it. Which is an image taken during the Iranian Revolution, which I lived through as a girl. And it was really just thinking about the way we remember place and how we change it in that memory. It's called Correction. The picture in her hands is of the dance of hundreds of unarmed men moving at the same time, standing apart. One holds a bottle aloft, hailing his fortune, and a boy as tall as her own now could be bowling that stone from his clenched hand, the windmill a perfect action, the line unbroken through the elbow. She takes a bottle of correction fluid to the picture, chooses the man who looks most guilty and paints him out. Her hand slips and the liquid touches a second man, so she begins on him, the edges of his body harder to see. His arm is linked through a third, so he goes too, though he looks like he carries no blame, is just there to watch. When she's finished, only the forest is left, its limbs bared to the fire, almost bending towards it, as if to sear this day onto the rings of its own lifeline, and a solitary boy throwing a stone. And I thought I would finish with an Edinburgh poem that is a response to this piece of work by Cornelia Parker, which is, it's not wanting to share it, apologies. It's a large gun in a tree, in the size of a tree. Yeah, can you see it? I think you can actually, apologies. I wrote it during the time of Black men being killed by police officers in the US, sadly about 5 years ago. It's still relevant now, but you can go and see this sculpture at Jupiter Artland just outside of Edinburgh. And it's called The Gun in Its Holster. The gun in its holster, like a rifle leant against a tree in a winter wood, is just waiting to go off. Look closely. Decoy paisley adorns the inlay, and one tear-shaped dropper points a warning from the sidelock. When held, the trigger needs no embellishment, no convincing. It's as familiar as the handle of that old hunting knife handed down from your father as your great-grandfather's one good thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. That was amazing. Thank you so much. That's all our performers for the evening. I'm going to do a few quick thanks and then I'm going to hand over to Russell just to have the final word. So I've already done a lot of bigging up of Noel and Shoreline of Infinity, but I'm going to do it again. Thank you very much, Noel, for hosting us this evening and for organising this launch and doing all the necessary behind the scenes stuff. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Alice, Ricky, Marjorie, Finola and Lady Red Ego for being willing to read for us and for doing so beautifully. Thank you to Russell, my co-host. You can see the book beautifully displayed behind him on his shelves. Unfortunately, I haven't got a copy yet, so I can't wave it for you, but you're doing a beautiful job of modelling it there. And thank you to all of you for coming along. It's really nice to see so many folk. We know that it's Book Week Scotland, and we know that it's also the Booker Prizes tonight, so we appreciate that you have chosen us. So thank you for coming, and I'll just hand back over to Russell now.
Thank you, Claire. Just to add my thanks to Claire's and also obviously to Claire herself as an excellent co-editor and co-host. If you've ever edited a book, you know how much work it is. So, of course, appreciate everything that Claire's done. She's been a big part of this book. And also to remind everyone really that Christmas is coming and there is no better present, I'm sure, than a copy of Umbrellas of Edinburgh risen from the flames to fill the stockings. And as Claire mentioned at the start, please do shop at Shoreline. I've put a link there. Today's the last day, or we might extend it a day or two, potentially, we'll see, but for the early bird price. So normally it's £12, but at the moment you can get it for £9.50. So a deal for over 250 pages of poetry and prose about Edinburgh, including all the new stuff. So we've got, again, Claire mentioned, there's new poetry, there's also new maps, a new cover, and other content in there. So there's another reason to buy more copies. And I was actually thinking about this on my walk today and how we're all sort of trapped in our particular positions in or outside of Edinburgh, and how actually maybe the book becomes even more relevant because it's a way to go and start looking at the city that we're not allowed to kind of walk into per se, and to sort of revisit those places that we're missing. So I hope that all of you will at least have a look at the website and consider picking up a copy for yourself or someone else who might be missing Edinburgh. And again, just to add my thanks to everyone that Claire mentioned, and say thank you for coming and good night. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Russell, and hope to see you all again, people. And thanks to Russell, thanks to Claire, and all the writers. So we'll say good night, and hope to see you again sometime soon. Hello.
Yeah. I know.
Okay. Right. Well, that was.
And that's it.
Yep.
You've gone very quiet.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yep. I think everyone's gone except for Nick Hill and Angela Milton.
Yeah, thank you, Nick and Angela, for staying around. We're just winding up, clearing up the desks and the tables and taking the glasses to the bar. Ah, those were the days.